Savoie Dressage Mentor on the Air. I am your host, Chris Garrett, and my guest today is Jana Kellam. Welcome, Jana.
Hi, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate your having me here today.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, Jana, you do some very interesting work, and I'm going to let you describe it because I'm sure I won't do it justice. So can you explain for our audience what it is that you do?
Well, I've been referring to myself as a happiness, mindset, and manifestation coach lately. And essentially, what I do is give people back the reins to their life. And I'm hopelessly into the puns, so you'll have to forgive me. But being a horse person, I have to come up with the equine sorts of puns. So what I've noticed in my life so far is that people tend to feel out of control a lot, and so I teach them how to take back that control in a sort of co-creative way. So there's not a dominating over or a needing for anybody else to be different so that you can have control of your life. And so a lot of the work that I do is one-on-one with people, but I've also incorporated work with horses, which is actually very similar to the work that I forget the name of the woman who did the expert interview a couple of months ago, but she was talking about equine facilitated experiential learning. And I've learned, yes, and I also have learned to do that work and have incorporated it into kind of my own take on life coaching. And so I really kind of see my clients as whole, complete beings, and I help them to find their own truth without, assigning it to them, kind of thing.
So when you say take back control of your life, what do you mean? I notice, like in writing, the things that we fear is lack of control. Is it related to that, or are you talking deeper than that?
Yes, definitely. Well, I think the way I look at it is that there's this sort of inner stillness and inner peace and inner wisdom that we all possess, and we are sort of trained out of looking to that internal place and try to sort of find that soothing in things outside of ourselves. And horse people are their own breed in a way, because really you can't feel in control of what's going on with a 1,000-pound or 1,500-pound creature underneath you if you are feeling out of control internally. And what horses are really good at teaching, and I think that the reason that horse people are attracted to horses is because they are really wanting to learn this. But horses are like mirrors. And so if what's going on inside for you is not still and calm and feeling in control and I know what I'm doing here and what my path is, the horses are going to pick right up on that and reflect it back to you. And people do as well, but very often we're taught to be polite, and so it's hard to get the same kind of clear mirror from human beings. So I love working with horse people, probably in part because I am one, but also because I think that there's more of an openness to seeing the horses as teachers, and to being really willing to shift the way you think about things so that what happens outside of you can shift as well. So it's both an internal and an external shift that happens in people's mindsets, and then what happens as a result of that shift is really profound in a lot of cases.
So how did you get involved in this? I bet there's a story there.
Well, it's kind of a long. I don't know if you've ever seen on the internet. There's that image that somebody drew of a chart, and it says what people think the path to success looks like, and it's a straight, ascending line. And then there's what really the path to success looks like, and it's a squiggly, crazy line that goes in all different directions. So that's sort of what I see the way that I got into this work as looking. But I grew up in a very progressive family. My parents were self-described hippies, and so I was raised with Deepak Chopra and Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer and Abraham Hicks and that whole crew, and I sort of, I think, took it for granted in a way, and I have a very deep-seated understanding of how we are able to create our own realities and that we create our own realities. And my mother used to, she would say things like I might come home from school and be really upset about something, and she would say, well, why do you think you created that? And it would just make me crazy when she would say that. But now, I had my way of rebelling. I always kind of joke about my rebellion as a teenager was doing things like shopping at the Gap and buying expensive shoes and, refusing to agree that I was a creative person or that I actually created my own reality. And so I kind of went my own way for a while and explored a lot of different religions and spiritual beliefs and philosophies, and ultimately kind of came back to, in a way, where I started, but it's like that spiral, or peeling back the layers of the onions. It's not really where I was. It's because I'm looking at it from a totally different perspective. But I've always been a horse person. I think as soon as I came out of the womb, I was ready for horses to be in my life, and didn't have a lot of opportunity to be around horses as I was growing up, but always did whatever I could to make it so that I could spend time with them. And then around the same time when I was in my rebellious teenage phase, I also stopped doing the horse thing because I was convinced that was what little girls do, and grown-up women don't do the horse thing, which obviously is ridiculous. But that's where I was at the time, and so I stopped doing it for a while. But I still, every time I would pass a horse pasture, I'd be like, "Oh, there's a horse! Oh my gosh, there's a horse!" And if there was a movie that came out with a horse in it, I was like the first in line to see it, and so I never lost that love for them. And then my husband, in his infinite wisdom, bought me riding lessons for my birthday one year, and this was before we were married, and he was like, "You need to get back into the horse thing because obviously you miss it." And I was like, "No, I haven't ridden in years, and I don't even know what I would do." And anyway, long story very short, I walked into the barn and was like, "And I'm home." It felt like no time had passed at all, and that really set my life on a very different course than it had been on, because I was working in a local nonprofit organization and had worked my way up into a fairly high level position there, and was really felt like I was on kind of the corporate path, but it never felt very fulfilling to me. And and having horses come back into my life really shifted all that. And I was like, you know what? I want to do something that has to do with horses. And so I learned how to do equine sports massage therapy, and that felt good, but it wasn't really quite it. And then I learned how to do Reiki, and I just sort of was like going around and absorbing all of the different horse information I could find. I joined DressageMentor.com and spent probably far more hours than I should have on the forum and watching the videos and listening to the audio and reading all of Jane's books. And ultimately I learned about equine facilitated experiential learning from my Reiki teacher. And then I was really like, oh, this is good stuff. And one session for me with the horses changed my whole life. And so I wanted to incorporate that, and I realized that my purpose in life is really bringing out the light in people. And one of the ways that I do that is through this work with horses, but essentially the bottom line is that I believe that everybody will be better off if everybody recognizes their own light and their own purpose and starts living it.
Now, some people might call what you do a bit woo-woo, as my husband loves to say. So what do you tell people when they come to you with that?
Yeah, that's really very common, and I get it. I mean, my father was a PhD in neurochemistry, and I have that very kind of analytical, prove it to me kind of part of my brain too. But I think that there's more and more, sort of shifting to that, finding that balance between the analytical, prove it to me sort of stuff, and also the other side of it, which is feelings and how our emotions can be guides for us. And a lot of the greatest minds in human history have really understood that it's our thoughts that create our reality. So in some ways, it's like, who am I to argue with them? Albert Einstein said things like, imagination is everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions. And Buddha said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. And all of that stuff ultimately doesn't mean anything if people don't believe it. And I don't think that everybody has to believe it in order to utilize this way of living, because essentially the results kind of speak for themselves. I'm not really interested in convincing people. I did a lot of that when I was in my early 20s, and where I felt like if I could just convince everybody to see it this way. But I really don't feel like I have to, and I know there's this specter of like the woo-woo monster that's going to come and take away everybody's common sense, but I think that there's a balance in there somewhere. I love watching people come to their own conclusions about how they can make this work in their own lives, and then watching them just kind of skyrocket into the stratosphere of success in all aspects of their life when they find that truth for themselves.
Yes, I do agree with you. I came from somewhat of an open-minded background as well with my parents, and my father is a scientist, and my husband and I first started dating. He thought I was pretty out there, but later. So what kind of things do people come to you for?
What I've noticed lately is that there's a lot of, especially horse people, as I mentioned before. I love working with horse people because I think, and I mean this in the best possible way, I think that we have a special brand of crazy. And I mean, really, like when I say crazy, I do mean that with a lot of affection, because I think like crazy is really important.
Yes,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Guilty.
Yes. But there's something about that willingness to be in a position, and I think that dressage is sort of the epitome of this, willingness to do something where there's no perfection. It's about the process, and it's about how you get there more than the final outcome. And I think our lives are about that. They're about that expansion and the learning. And my mother used to refer to it as the growing edge, and I really have gotten that recently. But I see a lot of people whose relationships are kind of out of whack. And by relationships, I mean that relationships with people, like their partners or their family or coworkers, their relationship with money, their relationships with the way they feel, the way they think about things, their relationship with their horses. And usually people who are wanting to get into this work have been kind of the self-help junkies, the ones they've read all the books and they've seen all the DVDs and they've done all the internet programs, and they just haven't really seen the results that they're looking for. And I think a lot of that is because there's still a part of them that feels unsure of their own truth, and so they're doing the whole, I'm going to look outside of myself for these answers, and when I find the right answer, then I'll feel better. And so ultimately they're still giving away their power. And so I love it when people come to me and they're like, I just, I want to believe in this. I want to believe in the that I have control of my life and that I create my own reality, but why does all this bad stuff keep happening to me? Or what's the deal with my relationships? Or why does my horse run away from me in the pasture? Or, whatever it is. And so I'm not a horse trainer. I'm not a people trainer. I'm really look at myself as a like a life facilitator. So I think when you're able to be really clear about your own stuff and not need for anything or anyone outside of you to be different, all of a sudden there's a new clarity that can come through. There's, for lack of a better word, there's like a sense of control and purpose, and I know why I'm here and what I'm doing, and the stuff going on outside of you sometimes seems like it's impeding in some way, but really that's just kind of the universe's way of saying, here's an opportunity to change the way you're thinking and to experience something different. And I've seen a lot of really, if I didn't know better, I'd call them miraculous. It's fun.
Well,
it's just fun work.
Well, I'm sure you have a confidentiality respect for your clients, but do you have some stories you could share with us about what's actually occurred?
Yeah. Well, I usually tell my story because, definitely allowed to tell that without giving anything away about any of my clients. And the very first time I had an equine facilitated experiential learning session, I was at my dear friend and teacher and mentor Barbara Alexander's place in Asheville, and her horse there's something about him. He's very magical and very spiritual, and I was definitely seeing him as like this almost sort of unicorn-like creature, and I had him up on this pedestal, and I was like, this horse is he's just such a better being than everybody. And as I was experiencing the session, this horse comes over, and he's being very much in my space, very energy forward, as we call it, and was sort of starting to kind of nip at my pants a little bit, and not hard, just kind of gently messing with me. And Barbara said to me, don't let him bite you. What does that feel like? And I was like, oh, it's not. It's just so nice that he wants to be near me. And this kind of went on for a while, and then ultimately it culminated in him biting my hand, and I was destroyed from that. Like I experienced this kind of this rush of all of these different things that these fears that I had of putting up any kind of boundary, like if I put up a boundary, then it would keep people away, or I wouldn't have friends, or I would never get married, or whatever the fears were that I had. But what I realized after the session was it was my lack of boundaries that was keeping me from really having the kinds of relationships that I wanted to have in my life. And this is, I don't want to make it seem like what usually happens in these sessions is that you get bitten by a horse, because that is really unusual. I think that Barbara said this was the only time he had ever done that she had ever seen. So I wasn't sure really how to feel about that, but he didn't bite me hard, and I wasn't hurt, but it was like a wake-up call for me.
Yeah.
And since then, I tend to work mostly with my horse, and I've never seen him do anything remotely like this, but he's not quite the same pushy, young energy. He has a much more kind of laid back, wise, beyond his years kind of thing. That was really big for me in learning about boundaries and how boundaries are different than walls, and my relationships all improved after that, because I started to play with energy, and my relationship with my horse got a million times better, and I stopped putting other people up on pedestals and started seeing people as my equals and as opportunities for growth and learning and that kind of thing. And so since then I have seen many, many, many sessions with many, many, many people, and it's not always about boundaries, although I think that this idea of relationships and what you can learn from working with horses about how to be in relationships in a really mutually respectful way it's huge and important in every aspect of our lives. So
this boundaries thing, boy, that comes up a lot. I've
yeah.
noticed that too. And for people who haven't experienced this kind of work, sometimes life gives you that 2x4 upside the head, which might look like a horse bite, you know.
Uh-huh.
It's not like the horse ravaged you, but he was like,
No.
hey, look, have a boundary already, lady.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
And it was
yeah.
almost like when I look back on it, I could hear him saying it. Like, stop me. You need to set a you really need to set a boundary. Like, I'm going to keep escalating. And I just wasn't clear about, you know, how, even in, you know, in my body now, reliving this, I can feel where that sort of anxiety was coming up, and I was just ignoring it. Because, you know, we're not taught to understand what our emotions are telling us and what those feelings in our body are telling us. In fact, I think we're taught out of it. You know, we're taught like, oh, well, don't, especially as women, we're supposed to, you know, oh, stop crying. Oh, you know, what are you so upset about? You know, and it's trained out of us. And that's not to say
deny.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was really good at that. I was like, I took great pride in being, you know, a tough, strong woman who, you know, was really used my brain, and I didn't get overly emotional. But again, there's a balance. I think what I was ultimately doing is kind of running roughshod over everyone in my life, and either that or being way too much of a doormat, and it was like not really any in between.
And so, women especially do that, and we tend to do it with our horses. I know that my horses, I'll let them run over me, and my trainer jumps on me all the time, and it's like, that's how I do life, you know, and I have to remind myself that, oh man, you know, I let people do this too because my boundaries are not clear, and the horses will point that out. So if you have a horse that runs over the top of you, look where else in your life that you don't have good boundaries. Yeah, I agree with you. The value in this kind of work, which I've worked with Sharon, so I know exactly the kind of work you're talking about. It's absolutely fascinating how the horses see beyond our facade. They see the real thing going on. I don't know how they do it or what sense they have that's beyond anything we know. They get it, and you can't pretend around a horse. You just can't. They know. I love this work.
It's very cool, and one of the things that I really like about it is, you know, as I was saying before, I believe strongly that everybody has their own answers, and you can feel when you've hit on that place where you're like, this is it, this is my truth, you know, for right now, and it could change later, but this is my truth for right now, and the horses acknowledge that in really cool ways, and so I think part of the experience for horse people is learning to have a whole new level of appreciation for their horses and the gift that they are. And, you know, because there can be a tendency to be like, okay, well, here's my goal. My goal today is to, you know, get 4 perfect half-pass steps. Or, you know, my goal is to get whatever dressage score at the next show, or, you know, get very singly focused and determined to have a certain outcome. And horses are really good at teaching you to be in the moment and to enjoy what it is that you're living, and you know, like, where are you right now? Because this is the only moment that matters, you know. So I mean, I could go on and on and on about that because I think it's such a gift.
Yeah. One of the great things I really got from Jane's Dressage Mentor reunion in Florida back in January was that the movements in dressage are not about the movement. You do the movement to develop the quality of the movement. The movement itself is not the goal. You do the movement to improve the quality of the gait through the movement. And if you take it one step further back, the reason we even are involved in horses and do these movements is because we're looking for relationships. So, you know, you can keep stepping back. Why are we even involved in horses to begin with? And the ultimate culmination is this beautiful dressage test. But what so many people forget when they start going for blue ribbons is that they make the test the goal, but the test is just the result of all these other smaller goals. So,
Love it.
and the kind of work that you do, that's like getting down to the nitty gritty. Why do we get in horses to begin with? And I think
Right.
that is so cool when that becomes conscious, when we
Yeah.
realize what is it we're involved with these amazing creatures for to begin with.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, I love that. I have not been able to go to a dressage mentor reunion yet, and that is definitely on my list of must dos.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was
Sounds
really
like
a good
it.
time. So yeah, I hope she does another one. So I'm
I
looking
hope so
forward to
too.
going again. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was great. So do you have any other stories you can share of anybody that wouldn't mind if you shared what they went through? Or
Yeah.
do you have
Yeah.
any physical healings happen?
Yeah, it's really interesting. This was a while back. I was actually doing a horse massage for an off the track thoroughbred for a friend of mine, and she was hanging out while I was doing the massage, and we were talking about, we actually weren't even really doing an equine facilitated experiential learning session, although it did kind of border on that a little bit. But afterwards, after the massage was done, and we were kind of talking about some of her experiences with her horse, she said, "You know what I just noticed?" And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "Well, I was having really horrible tennis elbow, and it's just been getting worse and worse and worse, and it's gone. It is completely gone." And she's like, "I don't know what you did." And I was like, "Well, I'm not sure that I really am doing anything. I think that hold space for people to have whatever experience it is that they are needing to have." And she was obviously ready to let go of that pain or that blocked energy or whatever you want to call it, and so she did. And there have been a lot of, other kinds of healing, emotional healings that have happened after sessions. And even one of my current clients has had really not a great relationship with her mother-in-law, and I imagine that's a fairly common experience. I'm fortunate to not have that problem. My mother-in-law is awesome, but she just always felt like her mother-in-law hated her and treated her really poorly. And we had our first couple of sessions, and she called me one day and she said, "Jana, you're not going to believe this." She was like, "Not only do I have several new students, 2 new boarders coming in, all of these big things that were happening in her business, which is, one of the main reasons that she was coming to me. But also," she said, "I went down with my husband to his parents' house, and my mother-in-law had made me a cake, and she just came over to me and said, 'I just love you so much, Nicole, and I'm so sorry that I've been so mean to you, and here, have this cake as my way of apologizing.'" And she said she about fell over. She just couldn't believe it. And I said, she was like, "You have like magic pixie dust or something." And I said, "No, you shifted how you're thinking about it, and
it shifted the energy.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wonderful. That's great.
It's not even like something that was on her mind as a, I really want to fix this, because she had in some ways sort of resigned herself to always having this kind of yucky relationship with her in-laws. So shifting one aspect of the way you think about life and the way you do relationships, it can change everything else. It like creates this ripple effect. And it's not something that she could have, forced into place or manipulated to change, or, we spend a lot of time feeling like I have to really work at this and I have to make this happen. And she didn't have to make anything happen. All she had to do was change the way she was thinking about it, and then all of these things started to change around her. So,
and I think that's something that people who are new at this concept that you create your own reality, it isn't that you now go and map out every single move and create exactly what you want by mapping it out exactly. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's just shifting the energy into something positive, and then the universe responds and things fall into place. It's actually not physically trying to map it out. It's energetically changing the framework of it, and then everything just falls into place.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that word framework too, because I think it gives such a perfect kind of visual image of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And it is a challenge because, boy, we sure get in the habit of thinking a certain way, don't we? And you have to catch yourself and go, "Oh, what what would, it's just that gratitude thing. What if I could just feel happy about something in my life and then watch how everything else comes happy? So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And it's my mother used to joke about how her mother used to always say, it's just as easy to marry a rich man as it is a poor man, or it's just as easy to fall in love with a rich man as it is a poor man. And she just, she always thought that was really sort of amusing that her mother said that. And then the way I think about it is, and I've sort of shifted that, and so what I say to people is it's just as easy to have a positive thought as it is a negative thought. It's just the one that you practice. And and people have said to me, "Oh, I don't understand how it is that you can stay so positive when you lost your father at a young age and all of this kind of yucky stuff happened and yet you still have this sort of attitude about life." And I'm like, I just am able to really quickly shift how I'm even if I start off going down a road where I'm like, oh, this is so yucky and why is this happening to me? I can pretty quickly start seeing the other side of it, the silver lining or the lemonade from lemons or whatever you want to call it. It's changed my whole life. I mean, my dreams are coming true like one after another after another. Even just to have horses in my life at all is a dream come true. But then to be able to do this work with them and really transform other people's lives too is it's just an honor. Yeah.
So if people have questions for you or want to contact you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, I have a website, and they can go to that at www.mindsettopia, which is the name of my business, .com, and
that's spelled.
It's spelled MINDSETOPIA, and obviously it's a made-up word. I was just thinking a lot about creating my own personal utopia and the importance of mindset and that, and I was like, Mindsetopia. So I really want that for everyone, and so I have that website, and there's my blog is on there, and people can also pick up a free copy of my book that I wrote specifically for my peeps, and it's called The Top 5 Things Your Pet Wants You to Know About Life. And it actually ended up being 7 things, but it started off being 5, and so you can get that for free, and it's a really easy sign-up page on my website. So I'd love to invite everyone who's listening to stop by and check it out, and my contact information is on my website, and I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to talk more or, even just wants to give me some feedback about their experiences with horses or with this kind of work.
All right. Well, that's mindsettopia.com. And if you're listening to this where you don't have a pen, just email me at Jane's site, and I will forward that address on to you. So, Jana, this is absolutely fascinating work, and I am so grateful that you came today. Now, you're in Asheville, North Carolina. Can you help people over the phone, or is this something you need to do in person, or what all do you do?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways that I work with people. I try to make it as available to as many people as possible. So I have group coaching programs that I do here in Asheville. I also have workshops and retreats that I do at the Biltmore Estate Equestrian Center, which is just a really special, amazing place, and you can check that out at biltmore.com. And Asheville is just an incredible place. It's very, very special, and I love living here. But I also started doing sessions over the phone and via Skype or other types of video conference things as well, so that people who aren't necessarily able to make it to Asheville can still work with me. So lots of different options, and willing to entertain other possibilities as well. If there's something that is sort of outside of those options and that somebody's interested in, just give me a call or shoot me an email, and we can work something out.
All right, Jana. For our listeners, again, it's Jana Kellam at dressagentopia.com. Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope to meet you in person at the next Dressage Mentor reunion. Don't miss the next one. It's a lot of fun.
Yes. Awesome. Me too.
Right.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And this is Chris Garrett for Jane Savoie's Dressage Mentor on the Air. Talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.